the FNAF 6, like the first floor before you go down the hole, that room is, if I remember correctly, massive.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host with the toast, Rytoast, here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's, like we usually do. And we have a bit of housekeeping. Some of you may have seen this. I made a YouTube community post, a Discord, and a Twitter post, but you know, the text posts have less reach than videos like this. I was thinking it over, and I think it made the most sense to switch from. So many of you may not know because I don't really do a lot to make it worth it. And I've always kind of felt bad about that. But I have a channel membership as an option to support the channel, if anyone so chooses. Now, but I want to preface this whole conversation with just watching the videos is more than I could ever ask for. So never feel obligated to, pretty much any creator online, right? Never feel obligated to give money, especially in this economy. But I just want to be clear about what's going on, I guess, with the channels. I did a lot of thinking, and I think YouTube memberships makes less sense in the current climate of YouTube. I had been kicking around the idea of ending YouTube memberships and making maybe like a Patreon or something. And recently, I won't get too far into it because it's not really the point. But a creator who I very much enjoy the content of, Eddie FRB, who makes really, really solid animated rap battles. YouTube like looked at his channel and just went, our AI thinks that your channel is repetitive content, so your channel's demonetized with like no recourse. Like there was one appeal process, and it was make a video explaining why we should appeal the decision, and he sent in the video as an unlisted YouTube video, and wouldn't you know it, that video has no views, but they still said, we've reviewed your appeal and denied it. No, you didn't. So, that's a terrifying thing to go through. And I think having the YouTube membership on YouTube is putting all my eggs in one basket, which is something I've always tried to avoid doing. So probably around the end of this month, the YouTube channel memberships will be gone, but in their place will be the Patreon. So what does that look like? Essentially, I wanted to, if I'm already moving to Patreon, I wanted to make it a bit more worth it. And now that we have, some editors on the channel, some extra help going around, I think I finally can make it more worth it. Just a very basic rundown. You can be a free member on the Patreon, and I don't really know what that gets you. It lets you see the posts, I guess, like the text posts. But I tried to kind of keep it at where it was, but provide a little more. I don't know. I always feel like I want to try to make a monetary support like that more worthwhile, but I don't know how to do that. So if anyone's got some ideas, let me know. The things I thought of, the $5 a month, and this is all on the Patreon if you are curious and wanted to look at it, will get your name displayed at the end of the video like we've been doing with the channel members. Pizza Podcast priority questions. This is a new one. This is essentially when I go to pull questions from the email, I'm going to pull them from five and up tier comments first. I don't know. Hopefully that's worthwhile to some people. I don't know. I feel very self-conscious about this whole thing. And then, the Discord server, which has always been there. And then there's, now this is the thing that I've always wanted to try to do, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. But now that we have editors, I can do it. For $10 a month, and that's a lot, so I understand, but I will be uploading all the main channel videos, the Friday theory videos, 2 days early on Wednesday without any ads or sponsorships. It'll just be the video straight up with no fluff. And that's just kind of like, I know a lot of people complain about not wanting to see the YouTube ads or the sponsorships and all that, and unfortunately I got to do those to eat. But this is a way to supplement that, like, if you really don't want to see any ads or sponsorships on the videos, this is a way to do that. They're hosted on Patreon. Let me know. I know anyone who is watching them, let me know if that's like a good way to watch them. If not, I can probably upload them unlisted on YouTube, and then that way, you can still watch it on YouTube. I don't know what's best, so you'll have to let me know about that. But yeah, early access and ad-free access to the theory videos, plus everything before it. And then I couldn't really figure out what to do, but other creators I watch who have Patreons have that like verbal shout out thing they'll do at the end of videos. So I was like, sure, we'll make one crazy high tier, and if you do that one, you get a verbal shout out at the end of every video. That's all I can think of. But yeah, let me know if any of that seems. I want to make this worthwhile, and I don't know exactly how. So this is what I thought of. Hopefully it is. I don't know. But like I said, don't feel obligated to join the Patreon or anything like that. I never want to be out here being like, I need your money. Like, I don't want to be that guy. It is a completely optional thing if you feel like it. And hopefully I have made the tiers themselves a bit worthwhile with what you're getting from them. But like I said, the biggest thing that would mean the most support-wise is just, y'all watching the videos. That's really, at the end of the day, that's what lets me do all of this. So just from watching is huge. And if you want to do some additional support and don't monetarily have the option to, unironically, and I hate to say it like this in such a intimate moment, but liking, sharing, and subscribing are huge because that promotes the video in the algorithm and gets more eyes on it. So, if you're sitting there like, oh, I'd love to support more, but I don't want to or can't give money, liking and sharing and subscribing are pretty good. Leaving a comment is pretty good. Anyway, yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way. I'll make a not this week because I have a sponsor. Next week, I don't think I have a sponsor. So I think next week on the main channel video, I'll make like a proper like ad announcement, I guess, for the Patreon. And then I'll end channel memberships either this month or next month. I was going to end it in a week. And people were pointing out that like it takes people a while to figure out stuff is changing. And, I'll probably, people will not realize there even was a Patreon if I just kind of like end the channel memberships in a week with not as much of an explanation. I don't want to leave the channel memberships up too long now that the Patreon is open, because I don't want it to seem like I'm double dipping or anything like that. So, I'll end the channel memberships probably within a month or so. And like I said, I think it just makes more sense and puts my eggs in multiple baskets to separate that onto a separate platform, in case, God forbid, YouTube points their evil finger at me and says, your entire channel is demonetized. In the month that it'll take to fix that, it would be nice to have a cushion, essentially. But like I said, obviously, I'm not trying to pressure anybody. It is an optional thing. It would mean a lot, and it helps a lot, but there's other ways. If you really want to support the channel and don't want to give any money, there are other ways to do that, like liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. I mean, hell, I don't want to do the cliche, the whole like, you should subscribe because X amount of people aren't subscribed. Did you know the YouTube algorithm is getting really good at knowing what channels to recommend, to the point where I've caught myself doing it, where I'm watching channels that I'm not subscribed to for like a lot. I think like, yeah, if I look at my watch, I'm like 40% of the people that watch month after month are not subscribed, which is that's just how good YouTube's algorithm is getting. But yeah, we'll move on. That's our housekeeping for the podcast episode. I don't know how to, I have this like intense self-guilt whenever I talk about stuff like that. So I didn't know how to broach that subject. So I'm like, let me just rip off the Band-Aid and talk about it. But as far as today's episode goes, I have a topic, which is, it was actually a question from the email, but I really wanted to break it down as a topic. And then we'll go into questions, which actually 3 of the questions I have pulled up for today are from the Patreon. So like I said, priority questions. So our topic today stems from a question from Unusual Carrot to the email. Him. The question reads, Proto Freddy's, as seen in Secret of the Mimic, Proto Freddy's being like the prototype Freddy Fazbear's Pizza restaurant, is the sister location observation room. I'm not going to go over all of my evidence for this. It would be one long email. But here are some bullet points to get you started. Identical layout, theorized to be in the same location. Help Wanted 2's Princess Quest being literal direct foreshadowing. Williams' discovery of F10 and 4 kickstarting a base of operations. Everything already pointing to Sister Location 2 being the next game. Mike being Gregory's friend and all that. All being said, I believe it makes perfect narrative sense, having shown us the humble beginnings in Secret of the Mimic to what became of the horrors of Sister Location. It's a really interesting theory, so I really like where your head's at with this. Because, like you mentioned, the immediate thing that sticks out to me is you're right. The layout is near identical. So I'm not going to pull anything up on screen. But, like, even just think intuitively, right? Like, the layout is 1-to-1 for the most part. It seems like the Freddy's restaurant room is a bit bigger. But, like, right, we have our central room, hallways up either sides with a side room on both ways. Top room, ventilation going all the way connected. Now, the ventilation, I don't remember I don't think it connects to the F10 and 4 office, but that's an easy fix because there at least is that center ventilation that I think offshoots into a hallway. Like, that layout is really, really, really similar. Similar location. We know that if this whole property becomes the property of FNAF, then, like, we have the FNAF 4 house. Underneath, we have those underground laboratories that would become sister location. I think this is further away. Like, if we're talking about the laboratories under Murray's house becoming sister location, which I do think makes the most sense, we do have a bit of an issue with, like, how far away this is. However, it is worthwhile to point out that, you know, we always imagine sister location as being directly under the FNAF 4 house. We don't know that for certain. We know it's underground and we know it's nearby. I would argue if sister location as a whole is underneath Murray's Costume Manor, that's still close enough to the Murray's house to, like, if FNAF 4 house is there, that's still close enough for everything in sister location to make sense, I think. I think that is still close enough. So, not to mention, you know, if we are to assume that this is, like, kind of the private office area, there are other things connected to this private office that make more sense for sister location. Not to mention the fact that when you leave from F10 and 4, you go down that tunnel, and then you're in that larger room that connects to the railway that takes you to the Murray house. That leaves a pretty easy opportunity to explain going through, what was it, Belore Gallery? Hold on, let me pull up the sister location map layout, because now I'm losing it. Yeah. So you're going Funtime Foxy's, the Funtime Auditorium, left to the private office, but there's that big room there. So, like, that could be the room where the railway's connecting. You know, there's a lot of ways to interpret that. Now, that being said, I like this theory a lot. I do still think it makes a bit more sense for this pizzeria to be the FNAF 6 pizzeria. And that's kind of, a lot of that is in layout, or in, like, visual design. Because even by the time of Prototype Freddy's existing, it already looks like a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, down to the, you know, the paint on the walls, the tile on the floors, the tables, the chairs, all that. And in the sister location private office, it's very much like a warehouse. You know, like, we have that one stage for Funtime Foxy, but other than that, it is like, you know, barren floors. It's like the gas canisters lying around. So I guess that's my only hesitation, is that, to me, it does still make sense for the prototype pizzeria to be the FNAF 6 fake pizzeria, you know, more so than the sister location private office. And that's really, like I said, that's just in the visuals of what we see on the cameras of the private office, right? Like, if I go sister location, custom night cameras, it's not. And then if I go Secret of the Mimic, prototype, Freddy's. Why are these pictures so small? I have to look up a video. I found pictures, but they're all like 250 by 140 pixels. They're so small. Make it bigger. Thank you, Game Archivist. Yeah, like the prototype Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is still under construction, but it definitely looks like a Freddy's to be, right? Like the walls are decorated, the floor is decorated. Well, like a sister location. Oh, you know, the walls and floor of this are more pizza-like than I remembered. That's a checkered floor with a little wall pattern. Well, that's fair. I guess that evidence point is kind of out the window, because sister location looks more like a restaurant than I remembered it looking. I don't know. I'll have to sit on it a bit more, I think, because I think it's definitely possible. I don't want to sit here and be like, it's not possible. No, it's definitely possible. I only hesitate on the location. Because it is, yeah, I think I only hesitate on the location and the usage and the size. Because like it is not really connected to the rest of sister location layout wise, like we would imagine it would be. So there would have had to be some renovation, and the less renovation, the better, when there's already a bunch of rooms closer to Murray's house that, you know, who knows what those go through, but there's a bunch of rooms over there. The size, you know, like I mentioned, the top room where it would be the layout of the actual pizzeria is much, much bigger in Secret of the Mimic, but, you know, that could be a slight retcon. That's not a big deal. And then, yeah, the usage. I think there's a really strong argument to be made there. I don't know if I'm fully won over, is I think where I'm at. I think there's a very strong argument to be made that the prototype Freddy's is the sister location, private office observation room, but I would hesitate to say it's definitive, but there's a really good argument to be made there. So you are right to point that out, unusual Carrot. And it's just something that I wanted to, like, it's a really interesting concept to think of, like, if prototype Freddy's is the sister location observation room, it also doesn't mean it's also not FNAF 6. There's a non-zero chance that people just keep reusing these rooms, you know? I think it's less likely because of the way Mike's office is set up in that. You know, you kind of need that vent maze, which you don't super get if it is the private office, where like there are vents, but not to the same extent. The locked room maze that we see in we get to see it in person in Ruin when we're going through those burner rooms, and we see how they're connected. That is distinct. Yeah, I don't know. I think what I would have to do is line up the FNAF 6 we see in Security Breach with what we see in Prototype Freddy's of Secret of the Mimic and see what's closer, you know? We'd have to see, like, what of that matches up well versus looking at, you know, the private office versus Secret of the Mimic. Also size-wise again, because I think, if I remember correctly, the FNAF 6, like, the first floor before you go down the hole, that room is, if I remember correctly, massive. Something about Security Breach, and, you know, I think they lamented that and fixed it in Secret of the Mimic, is that their environments are massive, huge environments. And I don't think FNAF 6's restaurant was any different. I remember being, like, if I'm thinking back on it, I remember being this massive empty room. Which, like, I think the entirety of the Secret of the Mimic prototype Freddy's could fit in just the main room. So I'd have to see how that lines up. And I would lean to say that retconning the size of the sister location office is more likely than retconning the size of the pizzeria in Security Breach, just because it's more recent. But at the same time, anything from Security Breach does need to be taken with a grain of salt because of how poorly Scott handled communicating the story to the people making the fucking game. So there is a non-zero chance that, like, maybe that is incorrect because of the whole mismanagement of Security Breach. No, it's interesting. It really is. I think There is a whole video to be made out of this topic, and maybe I will. Let me look to your points again. Because there's one that I'm interested in. You said Help Wanted 2's Princess Quest being literal direct foreshadowing. I assume what you mean by that is in the end of Help Wanted 2's Princess Quest, it ends with taking the sister location elevator up. And yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, it's never had a great explanation why we do that. But it's interesting that to get there, we have to go through a hole in the floor and then walk a long ways, and then we're back up. And when we look at the layout of FNAF 6 and Security Breach, you go through a big hole in the floor to get where Gregory was. And then on the same vertical level, Cassie's there, right? So like we've been there before. And then when you walk a long ways through the caves, you end up going up an elevator. An elevator that looks nothing like Sister Location, but you go up an elevator. This kind of goes back to a theory I made a couple years back when Didophobia first came out. The idea that Sister Location always stood out as weird because it looks so sci-fi and technologically advanced for what at the time would have been like pre-FNAF 1, possibly pre-FNAF 2. So it's like, why is this so technologically advanced when it's this early in the timeline? And that connects it, and Didophobia was kind of the interesting option there of, well, maybe there was a gas leak. You see the connection? Those who didn't catch it, Sister Location famously had that image right before it came out where it was canceled due to leaks. And that was Scott having some fun with it. If you brightened up that image, you got the text of what seems like a newspaper article or like a radio thing, where it's basically saying, it was giving us the story of why Circus Baby's Pizza World never opened, where it was like, just a day before the restaurant was set to open, they closed it down and canceled it due to gas leaks, and they took everything out. And that was, gas leaks was clearly like the lie there, but people kept saying they were seeing strange stuff at night. Well, Didophobia introduces the idea of experiments being done with hallucinogenic gas. I said it in a theory 2 weeks ago. I'm saying it in a theory this week. Didophobia is unfortunately really relevant right now. But Sister Location in Didophobia, the FNAF 4 testing chamber is connected to Sister Location. That's where it's being operated by. And then we go through Sister Location, there's these gas canisters everywhere. So I had made a theory back when Didophobia came out that maybe Sister Location isn't that technologically advanced. It might be somewhat technologically advanced, but maybe the reason it looked so technologically advanced is because this hallucinogenic gas was just like leaking throughout the facility. Especially because the gas in Didophobia, it didn't make you see things that weren't there. It made the things you see look more realistic. It was kind of like a more believable illusion disc, right? Because like illusion discs, the way they worked in the books were that it emitted this really like awful piercing noise to the point where like somebody threw up just hearing it in the books. But it would basically, the idea of the illusion disc is it would disrupt your brain's recognition because it was so grating that then your brain would have to like, okay, what's going on, and take the pieces you're seeing in front of you and make it make the most sense. So, you could have this animatronic that was pretty bare bones and just had like some loose costuming on it and some like weird skinny parts of it. But then your brain gets hit with the discombobulation noise and your brain has to piece together what it's seeing, and it sees something much more realistic. That's weird. Like, that's a weird thing for it to do. So, introducing just a chemical gas is, in a way, more believable. So, the idea that, when Mike went down there and what we're seeing through his eyes is this, like, really up-to-date sci-fi tech kind of thing, maybe that's the gas talking. And, there's always the option of a just straight up retcon via the Steve Snodgrass route, where in Help Wanted, we're introduced to the idea that the first 6 FNAF games are in-universe games that Fazbear Entertainment commissioned some guy to make to cover up what actually happened. And we're told at the same time, essentially, these are all in-universe games meant to cover up what actually happened, and that they are pretty damn accurate to what actually happened. They were just trying to muddy the waters. So, it's the game basically, I have always taken that as the game being like, Don't throw out everything you thought you knew. Still stick with everything you thought you knew. But if we have to make some minor adjustments, you can chalk that up to those games not being fully accurate. So the look of sister location could be one of those things. And then this all goes back to the elevator we were talking about, where Cassie takes an elevator up and then it gets cut off. And it doesn't look at all like the sister location elevator. But it is an elevator that exits to a hallway with a fan. And then there's some rooms, a scooping room. And, what do you see in sister location? We go down a hallway, walk through a vent, and you're in a room with a big fan in front of you. You go through some rooms, there's a scooping room. There's a non-zero chance that those caves are just stuff that has naturally formed or stuff that was already there, that you're able to sneak out from one facility into another underground facility, leaving the FNAF 6 facility and entering the sister location facility. But if that's true, then this wouldn't work. So there's a lot of ways to take it. But Unusual Carrot, thank you for your question. Now on to the questions. If you want your questions answered on the podcast, I take priority questions from my Patreon, which is a new thing we're doing, and we're starting with those. But you can also send them into Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com, which is in the description to copy and paste because it's pain to type out. Our first Patreon, hey, wake up. It's the first of the podcast. Wave the flag. This is our first ever Patreon question from Ginger, she, they. So I've had this theory rattling around in my head for a while that an upcoming game might reveal / retcon that Ennard was the Mimic all along. We know the first 6 in-universe games were based on some amount of truth, but could have been influenced by misinformation or creative misinterpretation. And I can see how the Mimic could have been creatively interpreted to be an amalgamation of robot parts and spirits rather than a complex AI endoskeleton. My question is, do you think they're also going to try and similarly reveal / retcon the Marionette was also the Mimic? In the movie, it seemed to me the Marionette was crawling inside of people's bodies to control them like Ennard does. We also crawled inside of Toy Chica to control her like the Mimic would. What do you think? Thank you for your question. Okay, I think there's 2 parts to this, right? For one, I don't think they're going to touch the Marionette. And part of that is I don't think the Marionette was literally going inside people to control them. I think Charlotte's spirit was possessing their body, essentially. I think that makes more sense for what the Marionette was doing in the movie. But then as far as Ennard, I think I'm much more interested, personally, I'm much more interested in conversing about Ennard, because I think you're onto something with that. I don't know if it'll be as direct as Ennard did not exist, it was the Mimic the whole time. But what I do think makes a lot of sense is the Mimic being involved in Ennard's creation. The idea that, the Fun Times, I would not doubt if the Fun Times had a lot of the Mimic AI inside of them, or at least had iterations of the Mimic schematics as part of their programming. After all, you look at the blueprints, that makes total sense. Funtime Foxy's whole shtick is that they can replicate voices. That sounds like a Mimic thing. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that where I think it is a really possible, if not likely, idea that the Mimic was used in the creation of the Fun Times, which leads into the idea that Ennard, whether or not he is just straight up the Mimic, which I don't think he's straight up the Mimic, I think the Mimic being a part of the reason why they form into one body makes a lot of sense. These 4 iterations of the Mimic, or possibly 1 iteration of the Mimic, who are all separate doing their own things, and then the spirits are the spirits that are within them, because I'm still a firm believer in Molten MCI, which would mean the Fun Times have the MCI kids in them. The spirits that are within them trying to fix themselves, mixed with the Mimic trying to take parts from other things and repair itself, forming into Ennard, I think makes a lot of sense, and then sticking with it as it's Molten Freddy, and then sticking with it as it's the Blob. And I think that does work. I mean, that does have a lot of interesting connections to it. But yeah, as far as the Marionette, I think it doesn't work. I don't think... the thing with the Marionette, especially, is that there's no room for animatronic parts. So it can only move on its own, realistically, if it's possessed. And that's something that I think is really, really important. And granted, I know the whole thing with the Mimic is it can fit inside, it can change its body shape to fit in whatever. But like the Marionette's kind of a stretch. I don't know if there's even an opening. The Marionette doesn't even seem like a costume. It seems like a bunch of like tubed felt, connected to strings with a mask on it. So I don't think the Marionette would be retconned in that way, but I definitely see a very big possibility for Ennard to actually have been part Mimic in some way all along. And, like everyone's been saying, more and more things pointing to returning to sister location for the next game. That'd be the perfect time to expound upon that. So, thank you for your question, Ginger. Our next question, also from the Patreon, comes from Nova, she, her. Not a FNAF question, but a Poppy question. I've had it for a bit. Early on in Chapter 5, there's a note titled something along the lines of Interpreted yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like communication, but ends in QUE. That talks about two, presumably, Playtime employees' deals with the prototype. In the message, it says something like, everyone is so eager to move on to the next chapter of history, they forget about the current one. I feel like this is partially Mob trying to tell us we've missed something important in the previous chapters, based on the use of the word chapter. What do you think? That's interesting. Well, there's also something that I've been desperately trying to figure out, which is similar to this. That is a good point. And I don't think it's something we've missed. I think there have been seeds planted for a later reveal with the prototype that we have not found the fruition or payoff of yet. The idea that, like, everyone wants to know how this story is going to end, that we've missed something, that is true. That is definitely part of it. For me, I think this, if anything, would be a teaser in the idea that, like, something that maybe didn't make that much sense, or something that, like, we didn't really think about in chapters 1, 2, 3, or 4, or even 5 for that matter, will be explained in later chapters the more we get to learn about the prototype and things like that. But in those early, let me get the note names themselves. Okay, I pulled it up. And there's a really hidden note, too. So I didn't even find out my first playthrough. There's Shipping Manifest, July 95. And I feel like most people found that. But then there's Inventory, September 95. That's really interesting. That I wish I knew who wrote this. If it matters. So, Shipping Manifest, July 95. We get this note that's essentially whoever... do we know who wrote this? No, I don't believe so. Let me pull up the transcript. No. So, it's basically... We hear about this in an audio log later, where we hear their plan to sabotage Rich. That they were planning some kind of division in Asia overseas. And we get the how this would work in this Shipping Manifest, where they were basically going to open up a second Playtime facility, or at least a second attempting to make immortality facility. In July 95, Associated Project Broader Horizons US, and then something in Japanese, it seems, for Asia. Project Garden World Play Park official note. Team, we're on a rush timetable here. BH is already 3 weeks behind schedule, and Play Park has needs we can't meet at current capacity. Overseas reps say their timetable is running behind. Keep overseas material through September 95 for safety. And remember to be delicate here. We don't want this to get on Rich's radar. So, hey, they're also hiding this from Rich, which is really interesting. The shipping inventory is 10,000 units of red corn poppy seeds, 20,000 units of PVC irrigation pipes, 10,000 units of fully organic compost, 100 units of 47,000 gallon corrugated still water tanks, 1,000 units of poppy picker components, and 100 units of rough terrain forklifts, or just 100 rough terrain forklifts. Apparently the translation means new beginnings. So it seems like they were basically trying to make a second immortality laboratory over in Japan. Right? We have the red corn poppy seeds, we have the irrigation pipes, the compost, the steel water tanks, the poppy picker components, and the forklifts. They're basically giving them their own poppy farm for whatever this is going to be. So that's already interesting. But there's a more hidden note that you have to, like, in the first box pulling puzzle, when you go, like, left and around and go through the vent, if you instead, in that big open room, go to the right side, there's another note hidden by, like, this crib, written in, like, really scratchy font that says, the name of it is Inventory September 95. So remember, the note said they were going to hold it in the factory until September and then ship. Well, apparently they didn't get there. Because September 95, we have stuff in storage. Lots pretty red flower seeds. Taste really good. Lots pipes. Lots stinky growing stuff. Kinda lots big water tank thing. Lots metal parts for new flower pickers. Kinda lots fork cars. Something big is here. Everything needed to make more medium. A lot more. My ideas. Give bunches of seeds to me. Give some seeds to me. Get rid of stinky growing stuff. Give the tasty seeds to me. So, this is being clocked by one of the toys here, that there's a lot of stuff needed to make more growth medium. And whoever found it wants to eat all the poppy seeds because they're tasty. So the interesting thing, and I did my best to compare, I couldn't find a match. Like I said, this is a handwritten note, and I was like, okay, this is huge. Because it seems like the toys had intercepted a shipment to make a lot more growth medium. The prototype is going to want to get his hands on that. Not to mention, the description for this note is really interesting. Wasn't like a description or something? Yes. A chance discovery changes everything is the description in this. Which, it's the idea that now whoever gets their hands on the shipment is able to make more growth medium in here. So if one of the toys gets it, if the prototype gets it, that's a huge supply of growth medium he can now make. But the question I was trying to answer for myself, sorry, I'm petting my cat, and now his fur is making my nose itch. The question I've been trying to answer for myself, who found it? And I was like, well, we have this handwritten note. Like, it's very clear that somebody wrote this. One of the toys wrote this. But I could not find a single other handwritten note that matches this. All the handwriting does not track with how this handwriting looks. Now the wiki, if you go on the wiki and figure out, like, who do we think, the trivia they give is just given location, it's possible it's an Outimal, and it is possible. I would not doubt it being an Outimal. But for something this important, I was hoping it'd be one of the characters we know of, but I don't know. But I think this is all setting the scene for us, right? That first note, the first note is kind of showing us, hey, there were people at the facility working with the prototype to get the Hour of Joy to happen. And we also get this note being like, around/after. I forget. When did the Hour of Joy happen? August 95. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's perfect. Literally July, August, September, right? So July, they got the shipment ready to make a second facility in Japan. Hour of Joy happens, and then a month later, one of the toys found that shipment. So this kind of sets up exactly how all of this runs down, is that there are people at the facility working with the toys to try to break them out, and then they can leave. They got betrayed and killed. And then once that all happens, they're not just left to their own devices, because one of the toys randomly happens upon the massive shipment of materials to make more growth medium, which I think we can assume the prototype gets his hands on it. Frankly, that's probably what we see at the beginning of the chapter. When you look at the window and there's that big crater of just like red. It looks like a pool of liquid. Either that's all growth medium he's made, or that's the poppy field where he's collecting for growth medium. So he's got a supply of it. No, this is really interesting stuff. And frankly, that house we see is probably the location of the next, hopefully last chapter. Because, we see that big pool of red, and then like an open cave, and then what looks like just a normal house. And I think the teasers we see, if you look at the posters throughout Chapter 5, there's one poster. Hold on. Poppy Chapter 5 posters. There's one poster that I think is our big hint here. Playtime posters, chapter 5. Yes. Wait, where'd you go? Interesting. Do we know that for certain? On the wiki, it's listing it as Lily's dollhouse, which is I definitely a fair interpretation looking at the color of this. But I swear there's this like house. Hold on. Now I just gotta pull up Poppy Chapter 5 long play. God bless you, the game archivist. Archivist or archivist? Anyway. Yeah. So there's this like big long track of something. And then I guess it could be a factory. It's hard to tell. To me, it looks like a big house at the end of this big, vast cave that you see through that window. And then at the other end of it is just this big crater of just red. So, like, I feel like that's definitely where the game ends, right? Or, like, that's our last location. Unless the facility keeps getting deeper and deeper. Where, like, that's where the prototype has been living, where he wants to live with Poppy, where he wants them to all be a happy family again, and there's plenty of growth medium to go around. So I took, and you know what? I'll remember to put this poster. I took this poster as the foreshadowing for that chapter. Because, yes, I guess it is fair to say, probably Lily's dollhouse. But it is a boy and a girl looking at their home together. Ollie and Poppy looking at the new home. Right? Like, that it's right there. Especially, and, you know, maybe this is my bias talking, but I'm pretty sure the first time we see this poster is right after we learn that Poppy and the prototype are similar experiments. And that was when the cogs started turning for me, where if you can watch in my playthrough, we get the big dossier on the prototype, and we learn all about the prototype and Poppy, how like Poppy was 1107 or whatever, because he was 1106, and how they're made of the same stuff, they have the same growth medium in them, and then you grab the magnetic cuffs, you do the puzzle, you go to leave the room, and there's a poster of a boy and a girl looking at their home together holding hands. And I was like, it was that moment like, oh shit, it was Poppy's brother, you know? So yeah, like I really feel like that poster is supposed to be showing us Poppy and Ollie. Now it could still be Lily Lovebraid's house there. Especially like I said, looking at the layout, right? We have the garage, we have the attic. That makes a lot of sense. But could be both. I don't know. It's worthwhile. I think, let me check what time we're at. Yeah, I think we'll call it there. So we managed to get 2 of our podcast questions, or our Patreon questions. We have 1 more Patreon question, which I guess I'll save for the next episode. So, yeah, we talked about those questions a lot longer than I thought we would. Thank you for your question, though, Nova. And again, if you want your questions answered on the podcast, I'll be answering priority questions from the Patreon first, but I still will be answering email questions as well, which you can send in to Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast at gmail.com. It's in the description, copy and paste, because it's pain to type out. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.